touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into the latest episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We are here a little bit late. Apologies to wrap up the Oregon overtime victory at Arizona State. It seems like a long time ago. We taped this on a Tuesday. It really wasn't that long ago when you consider how late we got home, but it was a Thursday game, so I guess that's probably part of it. 61-55 in favor of the Ducks. 3 overtimes, as I told Tyson Coleman, boarding the plane to leave Phoenix. Never in doubt.
Never in doubt. Well, you know, it's interesting. We mentioned on last week's episode going into that game how, you know, Oregon and Arizona State were so similar, and that coming out of that game, one team was going to be feeling a lot better about itself, and one team was just going to be devastated. I don't think we had any idea, based on how the game went, just how devastating a loss that no doubt was for Arizona State to have to deal with, but just how elated Oregon was too. I mean, they know they didn't play a perfect game by any means, but to fight, go to overtime again, multiple overtimes again, and come out on the winning end, you know, 5-3, feeling pretty good about themselves going into November, which is a tough stretch of games, but going in with some confidence. It was a huge, I think, confidence booster for this team. You know, externally, I know I'm not sure confidence it remains high in these guys because there are certainly some warts that continue to plague them. But you know, you'd rather have confidence than not, and I think they have a little bit right now.
The defense gave up over 720 yards in this one, but you get out of Dodge with a victory. Rodney Hardrick very hard on himself after the game. You know, he tweeted that it was the worst game he's played in his entire football career, going back, you know, to grade school or whatever. And, you know, but like I said, it was a win. There are things that have to be cleaned up, but it's so much easier to go about trying to fix those things. And we've seen it already in the 2 days worth of practice this week that, you know, this is momentum that they have to utilize. The offense put up 61 points. They weren't without their issues in this game also. A lot of 3-and-outs, very few first downs, but when it came time to make things happen, they were able to do so. It's kind of, you know, we talked about not only the fact that the records for these two teams were the same, the style of play on both sides of the ball at various points of the season, very similar. Even the coaches in what they were expecting, it's sort of what we saw. You know, the boom or bust on offense, where Arizona State was going to blitz every time. Well, they pretty much blitzed every time. And, yeah, they were able to stop the run, but then when they weren't able to stop the run, it went for 60-yard touchdowns.
They were able to stop Oregon on third down most of the time, but when they weren't, it was a long gain, and it really gashed them. I think ultimately, and you know, and maybe, you know, this is optimistic a little bit too, but I think ultimately at the end of the season, this Arizona State game could end up being the perfect microcosm for Oregon's season as a whole. There's sometimes you're watching it going, ugh, this Oregon team is really struggling. And there's other times you're going, wow, if they could do that consistently, these guys could beat just about anybody. And in the end, it finished on a high note. Now, hopefully this season finishes on a high note too, and you look back and say, all right, hey, there were some things from that game and also that season that you want to clean up going forward. But ultimately, you know, there's going to be more successes than failures, and you know, it's not the dominating Oregon team we've seen the last couple of years, but they do keep it entertaining, that's for sure.
But they get out to an early lead in this one. They actually led 10-0. The downside to that is they had so many opportunities early in the game. It really should have been a lot more than that. And because it wasn't, it allowed Arizona State a chance to get their feet under them, get rolling with Bercovici. He was much more effective running the ball than I think anyone expected. He ran it more against the Ducks than we'd seen him do in the past, and really watching them play against other Pac-12 competition, I don't remember him ever running the ball.
I got to think some of that too was sort of countering Oregon's own adjustment, because the Ducks were getting gashed up the middle by the running backs. I got to think they started moving some chess pieces around, and then Bercovici just started attacking around the edges late. In, you know, the second overtime, he's got that run up the middle. You know, that was, again, you know, the chess match that takes place. I think that was a good adjustment they made.
Arizona State gets rolling, they get the lead, they get the ball to start the second half, and they're able to build a lead, 11 points at 31-20 with 4:03, I think it was, to play in the third quarter. They're up 11, and they are rolling. And then Charles Nelson returns that kickoff for 100 yards and a touchdown. The Ducks get the ball back, which was amazing because it seemed like, unless it was a missed field goal or a score, that was the only way they were getting the ball back without Arizona State getting points. Well, they get the ball back, and then Kenai Benoit rips off the longest run of his career for a touchdown, and all of a sudden it goes from 31-20 Arizona State to 34-31 Oregon. And I think that's about when you guys headed downstairs to the field or thereabouts. Most of the media will clear out of the press box in the fourth quarter, if you're not aware of that, so that they can be ready for post-game interviews. And this was a game where a lot of the writers up there are like, I got to go down. I have no idea how this game is going to play out. And you were probably in the same boat.
I stayed up a little longer. Yeah, the most of the horde went down. I was only sitting next to you, so it was probably hard for you to notice what I was doing. I stayed until it was. I actually went down during the replay review of Dwayne Stanford's touchdown at the end of regulation. But mea culpa.
That's right.
Mea culpa. As soon as it was 41, whatever it was, 34. I started writing that the Oregon Ducks had lost, and this win-loss trend of the season had continued. I almost had a full recap written about the Ducks losing that game before I decided, it's getting close again, and I need to go down on the field to get some reaction. So, but yeah, I mean, and that's not the first time that's happened this season where I thought I had something written. The Washington State game, I had something written as well that I had to delete and then restart writing a recap. But just a wild. That play by Charles Nelson, we talk all the time about what a great football player he is. Mm-hmm. And 10 other guys had to make that happen, but the returner has to make some guys miss always and pick the right lanes and all that, and just what a play to keep the Ducks in that. Because at 31-20, it seemed like it was the snowball was rolling downhill the wrong direction, and there wasn't any stopping it.
So they tie it up with the miracle play on fourth down to Dwayne Stanford. I think it went in the books as either an 8 or a 9-yard touchdown pass, but it was. He
was at the 25.
Bird was at the 25. Dwayne was in the back of the end zone. That's 35 yards right there. Longest 8-yard touchdown pass ever. But and I meant to ask Johnny Munn about this. How he was probably getting up like, gosh, I hope he held on to it, because Johnny just came in and crushed him as he was going for the ball as well. Just an amazing play. It's fourth in the game, and big play VA. We've heard all about Vernon Adams' exploits at Eastern Washington, and we've seen glimpses of it, but that was him. He was in his element there, running for his life, puts up the game tying touchdown. They still have to kick the extra point at that point. They do so. Goes to overtime, and unlike the Washington State game, they scored last in the final seconds to tie it and send it to overtime. And personally, I just didn't have a good feeling at that point. I'm like, this just, they have all the momentum. Well, Oregon had some crazy mojo going in their direction heading into overtime.
Yeah, all I was anxious. I was standing on the sideline. I actually turned back and started talking with some Arizona State fans that were seated right along the sideline and said, this is one of those games where if you lose, you're going to be crushed, and if you win, you're just sort of going to be relieved. Now, I was proven wrong, because once it extends into 3 overtimes and Oregon wins the way they did, and to win it on an interception, kind of a walk-off type play, I guess that's going to be what happens in overtime, but regardless of the circumstances. But that locker room was jubilant, and so it was hard not to get swept up in that emotion. But at the time, it was just agonizing to watch that overtime and know, that somebody was going to go home just crushed. So. But it ended up going Oregon's way, so all ended up worth it. But yeah, I was joking with some fans like, hey, can we just come back tomorrow, restart this? The fans can tailgate again. It's getting late. Everybody's tired. The quality of football maybe is not great at that point, but again, worked out the right way.
Adams ended up completing his final 3 passes of the game, the last one on regulation. He was 2 for 2 in overtime with 2 touchdowns, so 3 straight touchdown passes. Probably a record of some kind, at least in the Oregon annals. I don't know if a quarterback's ever thrown 3 straight touchdown passes before. Crazy finish. They go for 2, which you have to do in the third overtime, come up short, so it's 61-55, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh geez, here we go again, because Arizona State was having no trouble scoring, either in overtime. So it took the interception. We never got to the point where Arizona State would have had to go for 2. They wouldn't have been able to just kick the extra point at that point. They would have had to go for 2 also. Never got there. Arion Springs picked off a pass on a slant route that he was beaten on. It was a different receiver, but earlier in the game, the same exact pass from about the same yardage line. Arizona State took a lot of heat for passing from the 3-yard line, I think it was, but they did it earlier in the game, and it was a touchdown on that same exact play with Arion getting beat. This time he jumps it just in time to come up with the pick. And yeah, the reaction in the stadium. It was one of those games where, sure, there were things that were extremely ugly from Oregon's standpoint, but they won the game. In my 10 years at Oregon and the various road trips that I've been on and road games I've watched, I mean, this is a game. This is filed in a way with a select few that are not going to be forgotten anytime soon. And really, it was kind of fitting that it was an interception to end it, and the air went out of the stadium, and you really couldn't help feel bad. I couldn't help feel bad for them. They've got a great staff there. They're great people to work with as colleagues, and that was one of the things I was thinking in the press box is, one of us is just going to be so distraught after this thing. And you're just like, gosh, I'm glad it's not me. Right. But at the same time, you feel bad for your colleagues on the other side.
Going back to the overtime play, I mean, Berkovici, when he had the touchdown pass on the slant in the first half, I mean, that ball was right on the money. It was impossible for Springs to defend from the position he was in. He might have been able to get himself in a better position off the ball, but as the play developed, I mean, it was a perfect ball. There was nothing to do with it. Berkovici's ball in overtime was he led his receiver too much, and Springs able to make a play. And we talked last week how they kind of win and lose with Berkovici. That in their wins he'd been really, really good, and in their losses he hadn't been as good. He was an effective runner, but he did miss some throws there. And conversely, you've got Vernon Adams, who just made every throw down the stretch. I'm not a big revisionist history guy. I know for the last few weeks we've heard from some people, the Ducks would be, only have one loss, if Adams had stayed healthy. And I tend not to drink that Kool-Aid. But after seeing him make throw after throw after throw at the end of the Arizona State game, I think it's very, very reasonable to say he hits Byron Marshall at Michigan State. That the Ducks do get that, the one first down they would have needed to run up the clock and beat Washington State. And you can wonder, if this team is 7-1 and only losses to Utah, who's had a pretty good season, where's Oregon ranked? And like last year, again, the defense is having some problems, but success masks that a little bit, and it doesn't seem quite as exacerbated as it does now under the circumstances. So, as Ken Wisenhunt from the Titans found out, you kind of win and lose with your quarterback. He loses his quarterback, they lose a couple games, he's gone. Unfortunately, hopefully Marcus Mariota can get it rolling under Malarkey now, the Titans' new coach. Not to get too far off the rails here, but we see the value of Vernon Adams at the end of the Arizona State game and recognize the importance of his absence, either not being 100% earlier in the year or the games he had to miss entirely.
Well, I hope there are fans out there that can at least watch these games going forward and get some sense of enjoyment out of plays like that and games like that. I was kind of disappointed to see so many people, the second the game was over, just hammering on the defense. Everybody knows, and I even sent a tweet out like, most yards ever given up by Oregon, who cares? Well, obviously people care, but in the moment,
you got to fix it going forward.
Yeah, exactly. But enjoy the win.
Right. I've literally seen people asking on Oregon fan message boards, would you like to see the Ducks lose out because it would force some significant changes that might benefit the team long term? And I mean, the only analog I have is the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's the team I'm like as nuts for as all of you Oregon fans are for the Ducks. It never occurs to me and no matter how the Penguins are doing, fire this guy, fire that guy. It's like, hey, this is my team, and hey, they drive me nuts sometimes. But I also recognize the passion of the fan that does, want to see significant changes. I don't understand, rooting for the team not to have success. But I do understand the passion and thinking that change would be helpful going forward. But it's been a little mind-boggling to see just how upset people get based on how a team that they're a fan of does. It's a big world out there. There's a lot of very important things to worry about, and you should be getting enjoyment out of your college sports team regardless.
You have a quarterback with a healthy hand. He's only going to be here for a few more games, and I don't think we've seen the last of his exploits to this point. Next up for the Ducks, Cal. That should be another entertaining game. The aerial attack of Jared Goff and the Cal Golden Bears. Goff, considered by many the top NFL prospect if he decides to come out of school after this year. And some great receivers. They have defensive issues as well, so could be another high-scoring affair. Hope to see you at Autzen Stadium. In the meantime, if you have any questions for us you'd like us to bring up on when we preview the Cal game, you can get us on Twitter. I'm at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.